Have you ever stood at the edge of a moment so immense, so defining, that it felt like the world itself was holding its breath? That's exactly where we find Heracles, known to many as Hercules, as he kneels before the Oracle of Delphi, his future hanging in the balance. The air is thick with the scent of burning incense, the weight of divine judgment pressing down on his shoulders, and then the words come, 12 labors. 12 impossible trials, each more daunting than the last, to cleanse his soul and reclaim his honor. It's a journey that will test not just his strength, but his very spirit. And tonight, you're invited to walk beside him, step by step, as we relive these legendary feats together. Before we begin, we'd love to know, where are you joining us from, and what time is it where you are? Let us know in the comments below. There's something magical about imagining all of us, scattered across the world, united by this ancient tale. Picture this, a hero burdened by guilt, driven by a desperate need for redemption. Heracles isn't just facing physical challenges, he's battling the shadows of his past, the whispers of the gods, and the crushing expectation to prove himself worthy. Each labor is more than a task. It's a mirror held up to his soul, reflecting his courage, his cunning, and sometimes his deepest fears. From the ferocious Nemean Lion to the elusive golden Hind, these trials are woven with threads of myth and meaning, each one revealing a new layer of his journey. And here's the thing, this isn't just a story about strength. It's about resilience. It's about what happens when we're pushed to our limits, when the impossible stares us in the face, and we choose to rise. So settle in, wherever you are, whatever hour it is. Maybe it's late where you are, the world outside your window quiet and still, or perhaps the sun is just beginning to rise, painting the sky in hues of gold and pink. Wherever you are, whatever time it is, this is your moment to step into the sandals of a hero. Over the next while, we'll travel through ancient forests, cross treacherous rivers, and face creatures born of legend. Together, we'll uncover the lessons hidden in these labors, lessons about perseverance, about fate, and about the extraordinary power of the human spirit. The journey begins now. Are you ready? The cave mouth yawns before Heracles like the jaws of the underworld itself, dark, damp, and reeking of death. Every breath he takes is thick with the metallic tang of old blood, the kind that clings to the back of your throat. Somewhere in that abyss, the Nemean Lion waits, a beast whose golden fur repels every arrow, every blade, as if the gods themselves wove its hide to mock mortal weapons. But here's what makes this moment so extraordinary. Heracles doesn't just charge in swinging. He pauses, he listens. The rustle of the lion's breath echoes off the stone, betraying its position. And in that heartbeat of stillness, something shifts. The hero realizes this isn't just a fight of muscle against muscle. It's a puzzle, a riddle written in claws and teeth. So he does the unthinkable. He steps inside, letting the darkness swallow him whole. The lion lunges, but Heracles sidesteps, using the cramped walls of the cave to his advantage. No sword could pierce that hide, but fingers can find a throat. The struggle is brutal, raw, bone against sinew, grit against growl. And when the beast finally goes limp in his arms, the silence is deafening. But the real triumph isn't just the kill, it's what he does next. With hands still trembling from exertion, he peels the lion's pelt from its body, the very hide that made it invincible. Now it becomes his armor, a symbol. The first labor is complete, but the message is clear. Heracles isn't just strong, he's adaptable. He learns, and high above, the gods exchange glances. Zeus strokes his beard. Hera's eyes glint with something between fury and fascination, while Athena allows herself the faintest smile. They all sense it. This isn't just a man completing tasks. It's the birth of a legend. The Nemean Lion was meant to break him, to prove him unworthy. Instead, it becomes the first thread in a tapestry of triumphs. But here's the twist. That pelt he wears, it's a constant reminder, not just of victory, but of the cost. Every time the weight of it settles on his shoulders, he'll remember the heat of the struggle, the way his muscles screamed, the moment he realized brute force alone wouldn't save him. Because the trials ahead, they'll demand more, so much more. The air in the swamps of Lerna hangs heavy with the scent of rotting vegetation and something far more sinister, a primal musk that makes the hairs on Heracles' neck stand on end. Before him, the water churns unnaturally, bubbles bursting like poison boils on the surface. Then, with a sound like wet leather tearing, the Hydra emerges. Not one head, not two, but a writhing mass of serpentine necks, each crowned with fangs dripping venom, so potent it smokes where it hits the ground. This isn't just a battle, it's a nightmare given form. Every sword stroke he lands only makes the horror grow two new heads, sprouting where one falls, a grotesque mockery of his efforts. That's when he hears it, the steady crunch of footsteps through the reeds. His nephew Iolaus, young but sharp-eyed, appears at his side with a torch, clutched in white-knuckled hands. No words are needed. Heracles swings, Iolaus sears. Blade meets flesh, fire meets wound. The stumps blacken and crisp before the Hydra's cursed blood can birth new heads. It's a dance of destruction, a rhythm of ruin. But the gods are never fair spectators. Just as the tide turns, Hera, ever spiteful, sends her claws into the fray. A crab, the size of a chariot, surges from the muck, its pincers snapping at Heracles' ankles. The hero stumbles, the Hydra's remaining heads hissing in triumph. For a heartbeat, the world narrows to pain and panic. The crab's shell resisting his blows, the Hydra's venom burning where it grazes his skin. But Heracles doesn't freeze. He roars. One sandal crushes the crab's leg. His free hand grabs a boulder, and down it comes with the force of a thunderbolt. The crab crumples, but the lesson lingers. Even victory demands sacrifice. The Hydra's final head falls, its immortal one buried beneath a mountain stone. Yet Heracles' arms tremble not from exhaustion, but revelation. This labor wasn't just about slaying a monster. It was about the humility to accept help, the wit to change tactics, and the resolve to stand when the heavens themselves seem stacked against you. As he dips his arrows into the Hydra's venom, a weapon that will shape destinies, the swamp's silence feels different. Not peaceful, but pregnant with possibility. The road ahead is longer, darker, but with each trial, Heracles isn't just proving his strength. He's learning what it truly means to be unbreakable. The forest is alive with whispers, not of wind through leaves, but of something far more extraordinary. High in the mountains of Cyrenia, a creature moves like liquid sunlight, its golden antlers casting an otherworldly glow between the trees. This isn't just any deer. It's Artemis's sacred hind, a beast so swift it could outrun an arrow mid-flight. And Heracles, he isn't hunting it, he's courting it. For an entire year, he follows its trail across ravines and rivers, his footsteps careful, his breath steady. No nets, no spears, just patience stretched thinner than dawn mist. Think about that. A hero known for crushing skulls and bending rivers to his will, now moving like a shadow, refusing to so much as bruise the creature's hide. Every time he gets close, the hind dances just beyond reach, its hooves barely grazing the earth. There's a lesson here, buried in the chase. True strength isn't always about force. Sometimes it's about holding back when every instinct screams to lunge. Then comes the moment. A clearing, a stumble. The hind's leg catches in a tangle of roots, and Heracles is upon it in a heartbeat. But his hands don't crush, they cradle. He binds the creature gently, his fingers careful around those radiant antlers. And that's when Artemis appears, her silver bow drawn, fury like winter in her eyes. "You dare," she hisses, but Heracles doesn't flinch. He kneels not in fear, but in respect. "This labor was set by the gods," he says, "but I would never harm what is yours." The silence that follows is thicker than the forest itself. Artemis studies him, the sweat on his brow, the reverence in his grip, and something shifts. She lowers her bow, the hind's antlers dim as if sensing her approval. It's a victory, yes, but not the kind Eurystheus expected. Heracles doesn't return with a trophy. He returns with proof that even the wildest things can be mastered with patience, that gods can be moved not by defiance, but by honor. Yet as the stag vanishes into the temple grove, its golden light fading, Heracles feels the weight of the next demand looming. Eurystheus' smirk is already sharpening in the distance, his next test coiled like a serpent in the shadows. The hind was a reprieve, a dance with grace. What comes next will plunge Heracles back into the dark, but for now, he allows himself one quiet thought. Restraint, too, is a kind of power. And the gods are watching. Snow swallows sound whole on Mount Erymanthus, every crunch of Heracles' sandals, buried under layers of white, every breath, crystallizing in the air like shattered glass. The boar is a tempest-given flesh, tusks like curved daggers, eyes burning with a fury that turns the very snow to steam where its hooves strike. This isn't a hunt, it's a siege. The beast has already flattened villages, left vineyards trampled into pulp, and now it charges at Heracles with the force of a landslide. But the hero doesn't meet it head-on. He lures it, step by step, into a trap of his own making, a narrow pass where the snowdrifts rise like walls. Watch how he moves, not with the reckless abandon of a brawler, but the precision of a strategist. When the boar lunges, he sidesteps, letting its momentum bury it deeper in the powder. The more it thrashes, the more the snow clings, weighing it down like chains. Heracles doesn't strike. He waits, until the moment the beast snorts grow ragged, its flanks heaving, and then only then does he act. Ropes woven from willow branches loop around its tusks, its legs not to harm, but to restrain. The boar's rage is undeniable, but so is Heracles' resolve. He carries the creature back to turrets slung over his shoulders, its hot breath searing his neck, a living testament to his mastery over chaos itself. Eurystheus' reaction is almost comical. One glimpse of the boar's rolling eyes, one snort echoing through the throne room, and the king scrambles into a giant bronze jar, his robes tangling around his knees. The sight would be laughable if it weren't so revealing. Here's a man who demands miracles yet crumbles at their shadow. Heracles doesn't smirk, doesn't taunt. He simply lowers the boar to the ground and steps back, his silence louder than any boast. The message is clear. These labors are beneath him, not in difficulty, but in purpose. And as the boar is released unharmed into the wild, something shifts in Heracles' stance. The disdain in his eyes isn't just for Eurystheus, it's for the petty cruelty of the tasks themselves. The gods test him with monsters, but the real challenge lies in enduring the smallness of those who set them. The boar's fury fades into the distance, but the echo of its defiance lingers. Heracles may be bound to serve, but he's no longer just a weapon. He's a force of nature, learning to wield patience as deftly as his club. And the next labor, it waits in a place where the air smells of dung and death, where the stakes won't be brute strength, but endurance. The Augean Stables will demand more than muscle. They'll demand a revolution. The stench hits Heracles long before the stables come into view. A thick, choking miasma of decades-old manure and rotting straw, so potent it clings to the back of his tongue like tar. King Augeas' cattle, thousands strong, have turned this place into a monument to neglect, their waste piled so high it stains the palace walls. Eurystheus' smirk is still fresh in Heracles' mind, the way he'd waved his hand dismissively. Clean it in a day, or don't bother returning. A task fit for a common laborer, not a son of Zeus. But that's the point, isn't it? To break him with indignity. Yet as Heracles circles the site, his boots sinking into the muck, something unexpected happens. His anger cools into calculation. The rivers Alpheus and Peneus glint in the distance, their currents strong and clear. An idea takes root, wilder than any battle plan. What if the filth isn't carried out, but washed away? Not with buckets or brute strength, but with the very force of nature itself. The work is backbreaking, but not in the way Eurystheus imagined. Heracles spends the day not shoveling, but digging, channeling the river's paths with nothing but his hands and a borrowed spade. The locals whisper at first, then gape as the first trickle of water breaches the stable walls. Then comes the deluge, a roaring, foaming rush that scours the filth clean in moments, leaving behind only damp stone and the sharp, clean scent of river water. The crowd erupts. Children splash in the newly formed streams. Women laugh as their hems get soaked, and for the first time in memory, the air over Elise is sweet. But Eurystheus, his face purples with rage. Cheater, he sputters, jabbing a finger at Heracles. You used rivers, not your hands. This labor doesn't count. The injustice of it burns hotter than the Hydra's venom. Heracles' knuckles whiten around his club, the wood creaking under his grip. He could crack the king's skull like an egg, and oh, how the crowd would cheer. Yet he doesn't, because here's the truth they'll never admit. This labor wasn't about cleaning stables. It was about revealing the smallness of the man who set them. As the diverted waters settle into their new courses, carving permanent channels through the land, something indelible shifts in Heracles too. Let Eurystheus scribble his tallies and sneer. The people know what they saw, not just a stable cleansed, but a hero who outthought the impossible. And in the quiet that follows, as the last of the murky water soaks into the earth, Heracles allows himself a single, unspoken thought. The next labor won't be solved with a spade. The Stymphalian birds await, and they'll demand wings of their own. The marsh spreads before Heracles like a fever dream, a vast, sucking quagmire where the water isn't water at all, but a sluggish broth of decay. The trees here don't sway, they sag, their branches skeletal, their bark peeling like blistered skin, and above them, perched in grotesque clusters, the Stymphalian birds wait. Not ordinary creatures, but abominations of feather and bronze, their beaks serrated like swords, their droppings poison. One glance at their talons, and you'd understand why the locals whisper of entire flocks descending on travelers, stripping flesh from bone in seconds. Athena's gift weighs heavy in Heracles' hands, a pair of bronze rattles, forged in the heart of Olympus. Their purpose isn't just to startle, but to disrupt the unnatural silence that hangs over this place. He hesitates for only a heartbeat. Then, with a motion sharper than any arrow's flight, he shakes them. The sound that erupts isn't mere noise, it's a sonic quake, a discord so violent it sends ripples across the stagnant water. The birds explode upward in a shrieking storm, their wings beating the air into a frenzy, their metallic feathers flashing like shards of a shattered sky. Now comes the true test. Heracles knocks an arrow, exhales, and lets fly. Each shot is a study in precision, not just aim, but timing. The birds dive and wheel like living daggers, their movements erratic, their shadows crisscrossing the marsh in chaotic patterns. One grazes his shoulder, its feather slicing through skin as easily as a hot knife through wax. The sting is immediate, venomous, but Heracles doesn't flinch. His next arrow finds its mark, then the next and the next, until the air itself seems to shudder with the thud of falling bodies. What's striking isn't just the carnage, but the transformation. Where each bird falls, the marsh exhales. The water clears fractionally. The oppressive weight in the air lessens, as if the land itself had been suffocating under their presence. By the time the last creature plummets, the silence that returns isn't eerie, it's peaceful, a balance restored. Yet as Heracles wipes his brow, the distant murmur of divine conversation prickles at his senses. Athena's approval is a warm hum in the back of his mind, but Hera's disdain, that's a frostbite chill. The gods aren't just watching, they're debating. Each labor peels back another layer of Heracles' nature, revealing not just a strongman, but a strategist, a survivor, and that terrifies them. Because a hero who thinks, who adapts, who endures, that's a hero who can't be controlled. The marsh may be cleansed, but the real storm is still gathering. Somewhere beyond the horizon, the Cretan Bull snorts, its hide gleaming like a challenge under the Mediterranean sun. Heracles flexes his fingers around his bow, the ghost of the bird's feathers still tingling in his wounds. The next labor won't be fought in shadows or swamps. It'll be a clash of sheer, unbridled power, and the gods are betting on the beast. The sea spray stings Heracles' eyes as his ship cuts through the waves toward Crete, the salt air thick with the promise of violence. The bull isn't just a beast, it's a curse given form, a creature so fierce it's said to breathe flames, its hooves cracking the earth like pottery. King Minos had once paraded it as a gift from Poseidon, but God's gifts often come with teeth. Now it rampages unchecked, vineyards trampled into pulp, stone walls shattered like kindling, and Heracles, he doesn't approach with a net or a blade, He walks into the pasture with nothing but his hands and a stillness that unnerves even the watching shepherds. The first charge is a blur of muscle and heat. The bull's horns graze Heracles' ribs, close enough to sear his tunic, but he pivots, using its own momentum against it. This isn't the Nemean Lion's brute force, or the Hydra's regenerating horror. This is raw, unrelenting power, a test of endurance. For hours they circle, the bull snorts, sending up plumes of smoke, Heracles' muscles singing with fatigue. Then, in a move that defies logic, he leaps onto its back, his thighs locking around its heaving flanks. The beast bucks, twists, even rolls, but Heracles holds on like a man clinging to a lightning bolt. When the bull finally staggers, its breath ragged, its hide slick with sweat and soot, something shifts. Not surrender, never that, but recognition. This isn't a man it's fighting, it's a force of nature. Heracles doesn't gloat as he loops ropes around its neck. He simply guides the creature onto his ship, its nostrils flaring at the unfamiliar scent of salt and timber. Eurystheus' reaction is almost pitiful. One glimpse of those smoldering eyes, and the king shrieks, flinging open the palace gates as if the bull were Hades himself. The beast trots out, confused, then defiant, its tail lashing as it vanishes into the countryside. Heracles watches, his expression unreadable. This labor wasn't about victory, it was about containment, about proving that some chaos can't be killed, only redirected. And as the dust settles, the ground still vibrating with the bull's distant fury, Heracles flexes his blistered palms. The next labor whispers on the wind, colder, crueler, the mares of Diomedes, creatures fed on human flesh. But for now, he allows himself a single, grim truth. The bull's rage still burns somewhere out there, a reminder that not all monsters stay conquered. Some simply wait. The wind howls across the plains of Thrace like a chorus of the dead, carrying with it the stench of charred bone and spoiled meat. Heracles' grip tightens on his club as he surveys the valley below, four shapes, pacing behind an iron fence, their coats matted with old blood, their hooves kicking up clods of earth stained rust brown. These aren't just horses, they're abominations, their madness cultivated by King Diomedes himself, who fed them the flesh of his own guests to stoke their hunger into infernos. The challenge isn't merely capturing them, it's surviving their teeth. What follows isn't a battle, it's a reckoning. Heracles doesn't charge in blindly. He watches, learns. The mares lunge at the fence when they scent him, their lips peeled back over teeth filed to points, their eyes rolling white with frenzy. A lesser man would falter, but Heracles sees the truth. Their violence is a wound, not a nature, so he does the unthinkable. He drags Diomedes himself into the pen. The king's screams cut short as the mares descend, their hunger turning on the hand that fed them. The sound of tearing flesh is ghastly, but the silence that follows, that's worse. The mares pause, their muzzles dripping, their breath slowing as if waking from a nightmare. Heracles moves like a shadow then, weaving chains forged by Hephaestus himself around their necks. The metal thrums with divine power, cooling their feverish skin, anchoring their wildness. They buck and scream, but the chains hold not just their bodies, but the dark magic in their blood. Yet as he leads them away, their once feral steps now plodding and docile, Heracles doesn't feel triumph. He feels the weight of what he's done. Diomedes was a monster, yes, but feeding him to his own creations. That's a line crossed, a shadow seeping into his soul. The gods are silent for once. No applause from Olympus, no whispered critiques, just the wind and the rhythmic clank of chains. Heracles wonders if this is the point of the labors, not just to test his strength, but to strip him down, layer by layer, until even his own hands feel foreign. The mare's hooves leave prints in the mud, each one filling with rainwater as they pass. By the time he delivers them to Eurystheus, the king doesn't even dare glance at the beasts. He orders them released into the wild, where legend says they wander still, their chains rusting but unbroken. And Heracles, he walks away with a new hollowness in his chest. The next labor looms, the Girdle of Hippolyta, a quest that will take him beyond the edges of the known world. But for now, he lets the chill of Thrace cling to him, a reminder, some victories don't leave you clean. Some stains don't wash off. The shores of Themyscira are nothing like the stories. Instead of warrior women basking in golden sunlight, Heracles finds a fortress of bristling spears and watchfires, the air thick with the scent of salt and steel. Hippolyta, queen of the Amazons, meets him with a gaze as unyielding as her sword, but also, unexpectedly, with curiosity. The belt she wears isn't just adornment. It's a symbol of her right to rule, gifted by Ares himself. And when Heracles explains his labor, her fingers hover over the buckle, considering. For a breath, it seems this might be the one task that doesn't end in bloodshed. Then the whispers start. Hera, ever the puppeteer, slithers among the Amazons disguised as one of their own. He hasn't come for a trinket, she hisses. He's come to enslave your queen. The lie spreads like wildfire, twisting faces that moments before had been opened into masks of fury. Swords are drawn, arrows knocked, and Heracles, who dared to hope, just this once, for diplomacy, finds himself backed against the sea, the sand churning underfoot as the first wave of warriors charges. What follows isn't a battle, it's a massacre. Heracles fights not to conquer, but to survive. Every Amazon that falls is a wound to his spirit, their blood staining the belt he'd hoped to earn through honor. Hippolyta's dying scream is the worst not of pain, but betrayal. Her fingers clutch the belt as she collapses, her eyes locking onto his with a question he can't answer. Why? The belt gleams in his hands as his ship pulls away, its gold smeared with fingerprints and ash. Eurystheus will crow over this prize, but the weight of it is all wrong. It's not the weight of metal, but of choices. Hera's laughter echoes in the wind, a reminder that the gods don't just test heroes, they break them piece by piece. And as the shoreline fades, Heracles does something rare. He lets his shoulders slump. The next labor looms, the cattle of Geryon, a monster with 3 bodies and a herd guarded by a 2-headed hound. But for now, the salt on his lips tastes like regret. The horizon bleeds into a molten haze where the sky meets the sea, a place so distant, the waves themselves seem to boil. This is Erythea, the island at the edge of the world, where the giant Geryon rules with 3 torsos fused at the waist, 6 arms gripping weapons, and a single pair of legs that shake the earth when he walks. His cattle aren't just livestock, they're a dynasty of crimson-coated beasts, their hides shimmering like polished copper under the relentless sun, guarding them. Orthrus, the 2-headed hound whose barks echo like thunderclaps, and Eurytion, the herdsman whose loyalty is as unyielding as his club. Heracles doesn't hesitate. His first arrow finds Orthrus between the eyes, the second silencing the monstrous yelps before they can fully form. Eurytion charges, but one swing of the hero's olive wood staff crumples him like parchment. Then comes Geryon, his three voices snarling in unison, his spears whistling through the air like vengeful spirits. The battle is a blur of motion, Heracles dodging, weaving, his arrows flying not at random, but at the single point where all three torsos converge, the giant's heart. When the final shaft sinks home, Geryon's collapse is seismic, his body's hitting the sand with a sound like mountains crumbling, but claiming the cattle is only the beginning. The journey back is a gauntlet of trials that would break a lesser man. Hera, ever spiteful, sends storms to scatter the herd, waves that swallow entire cliffs, and a gadfly no larger than a coin, but with a sting that drives the cattle to madness. Heracles spends nights knee-deep in freezing rivers, his voice hoarse from calling straying bulls, his skin raw from salt and sun. Thieves ambush him in narrow passes, their eyes gleaming with greed, only to flee when they realize they've challenged not a weary traveler, but a force of nature. And through it all, the cattle low, a mournful, constant chorus that seeps into Heracles' dreams. Their sound becomes a compass, guiding him through lands where the stars themselves seem unfamiliar. By the time he finally crosses into familiar territory, his sandals are in tatters, his beard matted with sweat and dust, but the herd is intact. Eurystheus will take one look at their gleaming hides and scoff, already plotting the next labor. But Heracles knows the truth. This victory wasn't about the cattle. It was about endurance, the kind that can't be measured in arrows fired or giants felled, but in the quiet, unyielding will to keep walking when every step feels like a mile. As the last of the herd plods into the royal pens, the air shifts. Somewhere beyond the horizon, the Hesperides whisper, their golden apples glinting like forbidden promises. The road ahead is darker, stranger, but Heracles no longer measures his strength in feats alone. He measures it in the dust on his shoulders, the calluses on his palms, and the unbroken rhythm of his own heartbeat. The trials aren't just testing him, they're remaking him. The weight of the heavens is not like other burdens. It doesn't press down on your shoulders so much as it seeps into your bones, into your very soul. Heracles knows this the moment Atlas, the Titan condemned to bear the sky's eternal weight, shifts the cosmos onto his arms. The air itself seems to crystallize under the pressure, each breath a struggle against the infinite. But this is the price for the golden apples of the Hesperides, fruit so radiant they are said to pulse with the light of the setting sun, guarded by a dragon with coils as thick as ancient oaks and nymphs, who sing lullabies to lull thieves into eternal sleep. Atlas, freed for the first time in eons, stretches his limbs with a sound like boulders grinding together. "You'll hold it until I return," he rumbles, already stepping away, his shadow swallowing whole valleys as he moves. Heracles doesn't flinch. "Just bring the apples," he says, though the words cost him. The sky's weight makes even speech feel like lifting mountains. What follows is a test not of strength, but of patience. Days pass, or is it weeks? Time bends under such a load. The nymphs whisper at the edges of his vision, their voices honeyed poison. "Let go," they croon. Atlas won't return, but Heracles clenches his jaw and endures, his muscles screaming, his spine bowing but never breaking. When Atlas finally lumbers back, the apples cradled in his palms like stolen stars, the Titan's grin is all teeth. "Why don't I deliver these myself?" He booms. You seem comfortable here. The betrayal is almost casual, a game to him. But Heracles, though his arms tremble, is ready. Of course, he gasps. But just for a moment, help me adjust the load. My cloak is caught. Atlas, so easily fooled, steps close. The moment he lifts the sky again, Heracles snatches the apples and rolls free, the heavens crashing back onto the Titan's shoulders with a sound like the world cracking in half. The nymph's laughter turns to shrieks, the dragon's hiss fading into the distance as Heracles staggers away. The apples glow, painting his sweat-slick skin gold. Eurystheus, when presented with the fruit, doesn't dare touch them. Their radiance dims the instant they leave Heracles' hands, as if the gods themselves withdraw their blessing. Take them back, the king mutters, pushing the apples away like they're venomous. And just like that, they vanish, returned to the garden by unseen hands, their magic untarnished, their lesson clear. Some trials aren't about keeping what you win, but proving you can. As Heracles watches the last gleam of gold fade, his shoulders still aching from the sky's imprint, he understands. These labors aren't just tasks. They're mirrors, each one reflecting a piece of himself he never knew existed. And the final reflection, the darkest one, waits in the shadows of the underworld, where Cerberus, the three-headed hound, paces the threshold between the living and the dead. The apples were a test of wit and will. What comes next will be a reckoning of the soul. The earth splits beneath Heracles' feet with a groan, the path to Hades yawning open like the maw of some primeval beast. Sulphurous vapors coil around his ankles, the air thick with the whispers of the dead pleading, cursing, remembering. This isn't a labor for the living. It's a trespass, a defiance. Yet as the Styx's black waters lap at the shore, Charon's skeletal hand extended for payment, Heracles doesn't reach for a coin. His gaze alone is currency enough. The ferryman hesitates, then steps aside. Cerberus awaits in the gloom, a monstrosity of muscle and malice, his three heads snapping at phantoms, his serpentine tail lashing the mist. The hound's breath reeks of old blood and older rot, each drooling muzzle capable of swallowing a man whole. But Heracles doesn't unsling his club, doesn't knock an arrow. Weapons are meaningless here. The true challenge isn't killing, it's taming. What follows is a dance of pure willpower. Heracles circles the beast, letting it lunge, letting it learn the futility of its fury. When the central head dives for his throat, he catches it mid-air, fingers locking around its scaly throat. The other two howl, fangs grazing his ribs, but he holds fast, his grip tightening just enough to still the creature without breaking its neck. The message is clear. I could end you. I choose not to. Minutes stretch into eternities. Cerberus's snarls soften to whimpers, his massive frame shuddering as Heracles drags him toward the surface. The dead wail as they pass, their fingers clutching at the hero's cloak, but he doesn't look back, not even when Persephone's voice rings out like a silver bell, offering secrets no mortal should hear. His task is singular, his resolve unshakable. Sunlight has never felt so cruel as when it strikes Cerberus's eyes. The hound recoils whimpering, his form writhing in the unfamiliar warmth. Eurystheus, peering from behind his bronze jar, takes one look at the beast's dripping jaws and shrieks, scrambling backward so frantically, his robes tangle around his knees. Take it back, he wails. Take it back or I'll. Heracles doesn't wait for the threat to finish. He turns, the hound's leash slack in his hand, and strides toward the fissure, still smoking in the earth. The descent is quieter. Cerberus, exhausted, plods beside him like a chastened pup. At the Styx, Hades himself emerges from the shadows, his obsidian crown glinting. "You stole my guardian," the god murmurs, though there's no anger, only curiosity. Heracles meets his gaze, and now I return him. The exchange is wordless after that. Cerberus slinks to his master's side, the chains reforged with a snap of Hades' fingers. The gates grind shut, sealing the underworld once more, but something lingers on Heracles' skin as he climbs into the light. Not just the scent of sulfur, but the weight of something far heavier. 12 labors are complete, 12 impossible trials conquered, yet the silence of the gods is deafening. No fanfare, no absolution, just the wind scouring the blood and dirt from his arms, the distant sound of Eurystheus, still whimpering in his jar. The road ends here, but the scars, those remain, and as Heracles lifts his face to the sky, he wonders if redemption was ever the point, or if the real labor was surviving what it cost him. The fire crackles low, its embers pulsing like the last weary heartbeats of a dying beast. Heracles sits motionless, his calloused hands resting on his knees, the scars from 12 labors etched into his skin like a map of suffering. The silence of the gods is louder tonight. No whispers from Olympus, no signs in the smoke, only the weight of all he's done and all he's lost, pressing down until his breath comes shallow. Eurystheus' sneering face flickers in the flames, that familiar blend of fear and contempt. "You'll never be clean," it seems to say, "no matter how many monsters you slay." Then the vision comes, not in the fire, but in the spaces between the sparks, soft, fleeting, achingly real. Megaera's fingers brushing his cheek, the laughter of his children weaving through the trees of a home he'll never see again. The memory is a knife twisted gently, a pain so sweet it steals his breath. He reaches out, but the flames recoil, scattering the images like ash. For the first time, doubt takes root. Not in his strength, that's unshaken, but in the purpose of it all. What if the labors aren't a path to redemption, but a wheel he's doomed to turn forever? The gods demand proof of his worth, yet they offer no absolution, no end, only more trials, more blood. His fists clench, the old rage simmering, but then a shift. The wind carries the scent of olive groves, of the river where he once played as a boy, before the weight of destiny found him. The vision returns, clearer now, not just his family, but the man he was before the madness. Not a hero, not a weapon, just a man who loved and wept and tried. The fire spits a final spark, and Heracles exhales. The doubt doesn't vanish, but it changes shape. Maybe penance isn't about earning forgiveness. Maybe it's about carrying the cost without breaking. He stands, the shadows stretching long behind him. The road ahead is dark, but his steps are steady. Let the gods stay silent. Let Eurystheus sneer. The labors will end when he says they do. And somewhere beyond the flames, in the quiet corners of the night, the ghosts of his past nod not in approval, but in recognition. The hardest battles aren't fought with fists or blades, but in the spaces between heartbeats, where a man decides who he'll become. Eurystheus' throne room reeks of sweat and sour wine, the air thick with the unspoken truth. He's running out of ways to break Heracles. The king's fingers drum against the armrest, his eyes darting like a cornered rat's. The apples, he spits suddenly, voice cracking. Bring them again. But this time, his lips twist into something between a smirk and a snarl. No titans, no tricks, just you. The silence that follows isn't silence at all. It's the sound of a man realizing he's not just fighting monsters anymore. He's fighting futility itself. Heracles' knuckles whiten, the scars from holding up the sky, throbbing as if in warning. He could snap Eurystheus' neck before the guards blink, could reduce this gilded chamber to rubble with a single swing of his club. But that's the trap, isn't it? The moment he acts in rage, he proves the gods right, that he's still the beast who slaughtered his family in madness. So he does something far more dangerous. He smiles. A slow, terrible thing that doesn't reach his eyes. As you command, he murmurs, and the words taste like ashes. The road to the Hesperides is longer the second time. Not in miles, but in weight. Every step carries the knowledge that this isn't a test of strength. It's a farce. The garden's gates loom unchanged. The dragon Ladon still coiled around the tree, its 100 eyes glinting like polished coins in the dark. Last time, he'd outwitted Atlas. This time, the only strategy is endurance. Ladon's heads rise as one, hissing in dissonant harmony. Heracles doesn't reach for his bow. Doesn't speak. He simply walks forward, his gaze locked on the golden fruit, shimmering just beyond the beast's coils. The first strike comes fast, fangs sinking into his shoulder, venom burning like liquid fire. He grunts but doesn't stop. The second bite finds his thigh, the third his forearm. Blood slicks the grass, yet his hands stay open, empty. Something shifts in the dragon's posture. Its heads tilt, confused by this man who bleeds but doesn't fight. The hesitation lasts only a heartbeat, but it's enough. Heracles reaches through the forest of fangs, his fingers closing around an apple. Ladon could kill him now, could shred muscle from bone. Instead, the beast stills, its breath hot on Heracles' face as he plucks the fruit free. The journey back is a blur of fever and stumbling footsteps, the venom gnawing at his veins. When he collapses at Eurystheus' feet, the apple rolling from his grip, the king's face is a mask of disbelief, not at the prize, but at the cost. Heracles' skin is gray, his breath ragged, yet his voice is steel. You wanted it done alone. He watches the blood pool between the tiles, the meaning clear. You wanted me broken, but you'll have to kill me yourself. Eurystheus kicks the apple away like it's poisoned. Enough, he mutters, just enough. The words are surrender, but they ring hollow. Heracles knows the truth as the darkness takes him. Freedom was never the prize. The labors were the cage, and some doors, once opened, can't be closed. The throne room trembles as Heracles steps forward, not in submission, but in defiance. His shadow stretches long across the marble floor, swallowing Eurystheus' gilded seat whole. No more, he says, the words quiet but carrying the weight of a landslide. The king's fingers dig into the arms of his throne, his lips parting to spit another command, but the air itself rebels. A peal of thunder splits the sky, not from storm clouds, but from the clear blue above, shaking dust from the rafters. Zeus's voice, though wordless, is unmistakable. Enough. Eurystheus shrinks, his crown suddenly too heavy for his head. The guards' spears clatter to the ground, as if their hands have forgotten how to grip. Only Heracles remains unmoved, his shoulders squared not with pride, but with something far more dangerous certainty. The apples, the stables, the Hydra's venom, the weight of the sky, none of them were the true labor. The real test was this moment, standing before a petty king and saying no while the gods held their breath. The silence that follows isn't empty. It hums with the energy of a bowstring pulled taut, the kind of quiet that comes before the world changes shape. Eurystheus's mouth works soundlessly, his usual bluster reduced to the twitching of a cornered hair. Heracles doesn't wait for permission to leave. He turns on his heel, his sandals scuffing the same tiles where he once knelt in supplication. The difference now, the chains around his wrists were never iron. They were the weight of expectation, the fear of his own rage, the belief that redemption had to be earned through suffering. Outside, the sunlight hits his face like a benediction. The people in the streets pause, their whispers trailing after him not in fear, but in awe. Something in his gait tells them what the thunder already has. The labors are done, but the legend is just beginning. High above, Hera's golden chariot veers sharply across the sky, her rage a streak of fire against the blue. Zeus's laughter rumbles in reply, not mocking, but proud. Heracles doesn't look back. The road ahead is uncharted, but for the first time in years, it's his to choose. The air still crackles with divine energy, but now it doesn't press down on him. It thrums in his veins, alive with possibility. The gods demanded 12 labors. He gave them 13. The last one was learning to walk away. The climb up Mount Olympus is nothing like the stories. No golden stairway, no chorus of nymphs singing his praise. Instead, the air grows thin, each breath scraping Heracles' lungs like shards of glass. His wounds, those old companions of pain, pulse in time with his footsteps, the Hydra's venom still simmering in his veins, the scars from Cerberus's fangs throbbing where the Underworld's chill never truly left his bones. Yet he doesn't stagger, doesn't pause. The mountain itself seems to lean into him, the rocks shifting subtly beneath his feet, as if the earth is guiding him home. Then the mist parts. The gods stand arrayed before him, not on thrones, but as pillars of light and shadow. Zeus's storm-gray eyes brimming with something perilously close to pride. Athena's owl, blinking knowingly from her shoulder. Even Hera's lips pressed into a line that isn't quite a frown. No fanfare, no trumpets, just silence, thick and heavy as the moment before a lightning strike. Heracles expects a test, a final trial. Instead, Zeus steps forward, his hand outstretched. The touch of his father's fingers against his shoulder is like drinking sunlight after decades in the dark. The wounds stop burning, the weight, the endless, crushing weight of the labors, of the lives taken, of the blood on his hands, lifts. Not forgiven, not forgotten, but transformed. Around him, the stars blink awake one by one, their light weaving through his hair, his skin, until he realizes with a jolt, he's glowing. Not with the borrowed radiance of Apollo's chariot, or the cold gleam of Artemis's moon, but with a light that comes from within, his own. Hera is the last to meet his gaze. There's no apology in her eyes, no sudden warmth, but there's acknowledgement, a queen conceding to a king. Her voice, when it comes, is softer than he's ever heard it. Welcome, son. The words unravel something in his chest. Son, not weapon, not monster, son. And as the constellations wheel overhead, their patterns shifting to cradle his name among them, Heracles does something he hasn't done since the night he held his children's lifeless bodies. He weeps, not in grief, but in release. The mortal world fades below, its sorrows and struggles now as distant as a dream upon waking. Yet the lessons remain not just in the stars, but in the quiet of his own pulse. Strength isn't measured in labors completed or beasts slain. It's in the moments you choose to rise, even when the heavens themselves seem set against you. The gods don't clap him on the back or feast in his honor. They simply step aside, making space at the fire where the immortals gather. Heracles sits, the warmth seeping into his bones, and listens as the wind carries the first notes of a new story, one where the hero doesn't end broken, but reborn. The tale of Heracles doesn't simply end with his ascension to Olympus. It ripples outward, like a stone cast into a still pond, touching shores far beyond the reach of myth. Think about it. How many times have you faced what felt like an impossible task, a weight too heavy to bear, and found yourself whispering, "If he could hold up the sky, I can get through this." That's the power of his legacy. It's not just in the feats themselves, the lions slain, the rivers bent to his will, but in the quiet moments between them. The way he faltered, doubted, bled, and still kept walking. Consider the Nemean Lion's pelt, slung over his shoulders long after the battle. It wasn't just armor, it was a reminder. Every time the weight of it pressed into his skin, he remembered the cave's darkness, the way his muscles screamed, the moment he realized brute force alone wouldn't save him. And that's the lesson that echoes through the centuries. True strength isn't just about power, it's about adaptability, about learning to wrestle your demons with more than your fists. Then there's the Hydra. Oh, the Hydra. For every head lopped off, two more sprouted. A nightmare that could have broken him. But Heracles didn't just fight harder, he fought smarter. With Iolaus at his side, searing each wound before it could fester, he turned a battle of attrition into a dance of fire and steel. The message: some challenges can't be faced alone. Even heroes need allies. Even the strongest among us must sometimes lean on another's torch. And what of the Augean Stables? A task designed to humiliate, to reduce him to a common laborer. Yet Heracles didn't shovel filth. He rerouted rivers. He turned indignity into ingenuity, proving that dignity isn't found in the task itself, but in how you choose to meet it. Eurystheus sneered, but the people, they whispered, they remembered, because cleaning stables was never the point. The point was showing that no labor is beneath redemption. Now fast forward to Cerberus, the Underworld's hound, a beast so terrifying even death feared its jaws. Heracles didn't kill it. He subdued it, carried it into the light, and here's the twist: returned it unharmed. The victory wasn't in conquest, but in restraint, in proving that some forces aren't meant to be destroyed, only mastered. So when we say his legacy endures, we're not just talking about statues or stories. We're talking about the farmer who looks at a drought-parched field and digs a well instead of cursing the sky, the student who fails an exam and studies harder, not smarter, the parent who carries grief like Atlas, bore the heavens, yet still finds the strength to smile at their child. Heracles lives in every act of resilience, every choice to rise when the world says stay down. And the gods, they watch, not from some distant throne, but in the quiet corners of our own struggles, because the labors were never just his, they're ours too. The monsters change shape: anxiety, loss, failure, but the challenge remains the same: to face them, to outthink them, and yes, sometimes to carry them. The world breathes easier knowing his legacy endures, not because he was perfect, but because he wasn't, because he showed us that heroes aren't born in triumph. They are forged in the trying.